Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us.
Hi.
Today, we're going to be diving into the world of rejection.
Ooh, rejection.
Yeah, using Jiang's book, Rejection Proof, as our guide.
Oh,
So
right.
get ready for some pretty surprising stories
Okay.
and some practical strategies that might just change the way you view no's forever.
I'm intrigued already.
I think one of the things that I found so fascinating about this book is that Jiang doesn't just try to overcome his fear of rejection.
Right.
He leans into it.
Oh, wow. Tell me more about that.
So he actually sets out to be rejected.
Okay.
And in doing so, he makes some pretty amazing discoveries about himself and human nature in general.
Yeah, what's fascinating about his approach is that he doesn't just, dip his toes into the pool of rejection.
Right.
He jumps right into the deep end.
Yeah, he cannonballs in.
Yeah, exactly. And he embarks on what he calls the 100 Days of Rejection Challenge.
Hmm.
So he makes 100 increasingly difficult requests
Wow.
over 100 days, all with the goal of getting rejected.
Okay, so he's seeking out rejection.
Yes, and these requests range from the mundane, like asking for a burger refill at Five Guys,
Okay.
to the truly outlandish, like requesting Olympic ring donuts at Krispy Kreme.
Okay. Olympic ring donuts. That's definitely creative.
Right.
So it seems like he's almost turning rejection into a game.
He is.
But what's the point of all this intentional rejection?
So by deliberately putting himself in situations where he's likely to be rejected, Jiang forces himself to confront his deepest fear.
Okay.
He's essentially desensitizing himself to the emotional sting of rejection.
So kind of like exposure therapy.
Exactly like exposure therapy.
But rejection still hurts, right?
Yeah.
It's not like we can just switch off our emotions.
You're right. The pain of rejection is very real.
Hmm.
And in fact, studies show that our brains release opioids when we experience social rejection, similar to the response to physical pain.
Interesting.
Back in our cave-dwelling days, social rejection could mean being ostracized from the group,
Right.
which could literally be a death sentence.
Yeah. So even though that fear might be outdated in our modern world,
Right.
our brains haven't quite caught up.
Exactly. Our brains haven't quite caught up.
Wow.
And, understanding this evolutionary basis helps us realize that the intensity of our reaction to rejection isn't always rational, but it's a powerful force nonetheless.
Okay, so back to Jiang and his 100-day challenge.
Yeah.
Does he just wallow in rejection for 100 days straight?
Not at all. That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Many of these seemingly absurd requests actually lead to unexpected positive experiences.
Oh, really? Like what?
Okay, let's go back to that Krispy Kreme scenario.
Okay, the Olympic donuts.
Yes. So the employee, Jackie, could have easily dismissed his request as ridiculous,
Yeah.
but instead she pauses and asks, "When are you looking for these?"
Wow, what a shift.
Right.
Just by asking why, she changes the whole dynamic of the interaction.
Exactly. That simple question opened up a dialogue.
Yeah.
And it showed Jiang that even in the face of an unconventional request,
Right.
there's room for connection and understanding.
So maybe rejection isn't always a hard no, but rather an opportunity for conversation and creative problem solving.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this is a recurring theme throughout Jiang's journey.
Mm-hmm.
He discovers that many times a no is not a rejection of him as a person,
Right.
but rather a rejection of the specific request or the way it was presented.
I can see how that distinction would be empowering.
Right.
It takes the personal sting out of rejection.
Yeah.
But what about those times when you do get a flat out no?
Right.
How do you deal with that?
Well, Jiang has developed some pretty effective strategies for managing those situations too.
Like what?
One of his key tactics is, you guessed it, asking why.
Oh, there it is.
So when someone rejects him, he makes it a habit to ask why they said no.
It's like he's turning rejection into a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Almost like a research project into human behavior.
Exactly.
Wow.
And by understanding the reason behind the no, he can sometimes turn it into a yes.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me about one of these no to yes transformations.
All right. So take his experience at McDonald's.
Okay.
He walks in during the afternoon and requests a McGriddles,
Right.
which is only served during breakfast. Of
Okay.
course, he gets rejected.
Yeah.
But instead of just accepting defeat, he asks why.
I'm sensing a pattern here.
Rightfully so.
Okay.
And the employee explains that they can't use the grill for breakfast items after a certain time.
So there was a legitimate reason behind it, not just an arbitrary no.
Right.
So what did he do?
So, armed with this new information, Jiang adjusted his request.
Okay.
He asked if they could make an exception just this once.
Did they?
And surprisingly, they did.
Wow, he got his McGriddle.
He got his McGriddles.
That's impressive.
Right.
So by understanding the why, he was able to like find a workaround and ultimately achieve his goal.
Precisely.
Wow.
But why isn't always a magic bullet. Sometimes, even when you understand the reason behind a rejection, you still have to accept the no.
Okay.
And that's where his next strategy comes into play. Humor.
Humor.
Yes, humor.
Okay, I need to hear how humor plays into all of this.
So Jiang realizes that using humor can diffuse tense situations.
Okay.
And turn a rejection into a shared joke.
Mm.
He uses it as a way to manage his own fear.
Okay.
And often to create a more pleasant interaction, even if he doesn't get what he wants.
I can see how that would work. Humor can be disarming.
Right.
And create a sense of connection even in the face of a no.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an example?
Of course, one that comes to mind is when he goes to PetSmart and asks for a haircut.
Wait, a haircut at PetSmart?
You heard that right?
Uh,
So when the groomer tells him they don't do that,
yeah.
he jokes, "Can you treat me like a German Shepherd?"
He's definitely not afraid to put himself out there.
No, he is not.
Did it work? Did he get the haircut?
No, he didn't get the haircut.
Okay.
But he got a laugh. And probably a story to tell.
That's true.
Which for Jiang is often just as valuable.
It sounds like he's learning to detach from the outcome and find the humor in the situation,
Yes.
even when it's uncomfortable.
Exactly. And that leads us to another one of his key takeaways. Retreat, don't run.
Retreat, don't run.
Yes.
What does that mean in the context of rejection?
So instead of giving up entirely after a rejection,
Right.
Jiang encourages adjusting the request
Okay.
or finding a different approach.
So it's about being persistent and flexible
Yes.
rather than throwing in the towel at the first sign of resistance.
Precisely. He demonstrates this when he tries to get a free room at a luxury hotel.
Okay.
His initial request is denied.
Yeah.
But instead of giving up, he asks for a tour of a room.
Oh.
And he ends up getting to take a nap on one of their famous beds.
Okay. It sounds like he's mastered the art of turning rejection into a win, even if it's not the win he initially envisioned.
It's about recognizing that there are different levels of yes. A partial yes can still be a valuable outcome.
That's a great perspective shift. It's not always about getting exactly what you want,
Right.
but rather about being open to like unexpected possibilities.
And sometimes that means challenging our assumptions about rejection itself.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
So Jiang emphasizes that rejection often says more about the rejector than the rejectee.
Okay.
So people react to requests based on their own personalities, experiences, and even their mood at that particular moment.
So someone might say no simply because they're having a bad day,
Exactly.
not because there's anything wrong with the request itself.
Exactly. This is perfectly illustrated by his experience trying to get a job in one day.
Oh, wow.
He walks into 3 different offices
Okay.
and asks if he can work there for the day.
Yeah.
At the first office, he's met with suspicion and dismissed.
Okay.
At the second, he's told they have no openings. But at the third office, the office manager, Jennifer, is intrigued by his request and offers him a one-day position as an assistant office manager.
Wow, what a contrast. Same request, 3 completely different responses.
It just goes to show that you never know how someone is going to react.
Right.
Jennifer later explained that her upbringing and past experiences shaped her open-minded approach to people and their requests.
It's a good reminder not to take rejection personally.
Yes.
It's often about the other person, not about you.
And realizing this was a turning point for Jiang.
Okay.
He began to view rejection as a human interaction
Yeah.
rather than a judgment on his worth.
That's a powerful shift in perspective.
It is.
It seems like this whole rejection experiment is leading him to a deeper understanding of himself and human nature in general.
Absolutely. It's not just about getting more yeses. It's about understanding the nuances of human interaction
Okay.
and developing the confidence to put yourself out there even when you risk being rejected.
This deep dive is already giving me so much to think about.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's still so much to uncover about Jiang's journey and the powerful lessons he learned from his 100 days of rejection.
I can't wait to hear more. Okay, so we left off talking about how Jiang's experience taught him not to take rejection personally.
Right.
But what happens when, despite our best efforts, we still get knocked down? Where do we find the resilience to, keep going?
That's where self-acceptance comes in.
Okay.
It's not just about getting comfortable with hearing no, but about embracing who you are.
Right.
Quirks and all.
Yeah.
And pursuing goals that genuinely matter to you.
Okay.
Regardless of what others think.
So it's about finding that inner compass.
Yes.
The intrinsic motivation that keeps you going, even when the external validation isn't there.
Exactly. And this shift in focus from external to internal is a key part of Jiang's transformation.
Okay.
He starts to realize that true fulfillment comes from pursuing passions that resonate with him personally, not just chasing after things he thinks he should want.
This is such a crucial point.
Yeah.
So many of us get caught up in trying to live up to societal expectations.
Right.
Or chasing external markers of success like wealth or fame. Instead of asking ourselves, what truly lights me up?
Exactly. And that's where Jiang's anecdote about Alexander the Great comes in.
Ooh, Alexander the Great. Okay.
Yeah. So during one of his conquests, Alexander encounters a naked philosopher sitting in the woods.
Okay. Naked philosopher.
A naked philosopher.
This is getting good.
It is so Alexander, confused by the philosopher's apparent lack of ambition,
Right.
asks him, "What are you doing?" The philosopher replies, "I'm experiencing nothingness. What are you doing?"
Oh my God.
To which Alexander responds, "I'm conquering the world."
What a clash of worldviews.
I know, it's almost comical
Yeah.
to imagine these two figures encountering each other.
Totally.
They both laugh at each other, each thinking the other is a fool. But Jiang points out that in a way, they were both conquering the world. So Alexander was focused on conquering the external physical world,
Right.
while the philosopher was conquering his own internal world.
It's like they represent two different paths to fulfillment. One external and one internal.
Yeah,
And neither is inherently better than the other.
exactly. And this realization was a turning point for Jiang.
Okay.
It freed him from the need for constant external approval
Yeah.
and allowed him to focus on pursuing his own definition of success.
It's like he's saying, forget keeping up with the Joneses.
Right.
Figure out what your own version of success looks like and go after that.
Precisely. But it's important to note that this doesn't mean external validation is completely unimportant.
Right.
Jiang still values recognition and connection.
Okay.
It's just that it's no longer his primary driving force.
So it's about finding a balance, pursuing your passions, while still being open to connecting with others who share your values.
Exactly. And this brings us to another important theme in Jiang's journey,
Okay.
the role of empathy.
Okay. How does empathy tie into overcoming the fear of rejection?
Well, through his rejection experiments, Jiang found himself on the receiving end of some pretty harsh responses.
Right?
These experiences, especially those involving asking strangers for help by money,
Yeah.
gave him a first-hand glimpse into how uncomfortable it can be to be the target of an unexpected or unconventional request.
So he's walking a mile in the shoes of those who are frequently rejected.
Precisely. This leads him to reflect on the challenges faced by people who are constantly being told no,
Right.
like panhandlers or those experiencing homelessness.
Okay.
To gain a deeper understanding, he decides to interview Frank, a disabled veteran who relies on panhandling.
I bet that was a powerful conversation.
It was. Frank shared that while panhandling can be demoralizing,
Right.
he had developed a thick skin.
Mm.
He focuses on those few people who show kindness, and that's what keeps him going.
That's incredible resilience.
It is.
Wow.
And this encounter reinforced for Jiang the importance of empathy and understanding. Even in the face of constant rejection, Frank finds a way to cope and maintain his dignity.
It's like a reminder that everyone has a story. And we often make judgments without knowing the full picture.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another crucial aspect of communication.
Okay.
One that directly ties into rejection, being mindful of how we deliver those no's.
Okay, so we're flipping the script now, looking at rejection from the perspective of the rejector.
Exactly. Jiang highlights how the way we deliver rejection can have a significant impact on the recipient.
Okay.
He contrasts two real-life examples to illustrate this point.
I'm all ears.
So on one hand, we have Jackie from Krispy Kreme, who responded to Jiang's outlandish donut request with kindness and curiosity.
Right. Her willingness to go above and beyond garnered widespread praise.
It did. What's the contrasting example?
Yeah.
It involves Kelly Blazek, a communications professional who gained notoriety for sending a scathing email to a job seeker who had reached out to her on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Her harsh and unprofessional tone went viral,
Yeah, I remember that.
and she was publicly criticized for her behavior.
Ouch. I can see how that would damage her reputation.
It did, and it reinforces the point that even when we have to say no,
Right.
treating people with respect is paramount.
It's like that saying, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Kindness goes a long way, even in rejection.
Exactly. But aside from just being nice,
Yeah.
are there specific techniques for delivering a no effectively?
Yeah. What are those?
Absolutely. Jiang identifies two common yet ineffective rejection styles that we often fall into. The big setup
Okay.
and the yes, but.
Okay, break those down for me. What's the big setup?
So think of it as overcompensating. You offer a lengthy explanation before delivering the bad news, often filled with compliments or apologies
Right.
that end up feeling hollow.
It's like trying to soften the blow, but it ends up being insincere.
Exactly. And then there's the yes, but,
Okay.
which starts with a seemingly positive affirmation,
Right.
but immediately negates it with a but, followed by the rejection.
So it's like dangling a carrot before snatching it away. That's got to be frustrating for the recipient.
It is. Jiang provides an example of this when he asks to use the intercom at Costco.
Okay, at Costco.
The manager initially says, "I'd love to do it, believe me, but unfortunately I can't."
That unfortunately really undermines the initial yes, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like he's saying, I want to help you, but...
Exactly. It comes across as inauthentic. Jiang learned that a more effective approach is to be direct and honest.
Yeah.
State the rejection clearly and concisely without unnecessary embellishments.
So it's about being straightforward, but respectful. No need to beat around the bush.
Exactly. And if possible, offering an alternative can help soften the blow and maintain a positive relationship.
Didn't the Costco manager do this?
He did.
Okay.
After rejecting Jiang's request to use the intercom,
Right.
the manager offers to buy him and his family dinner.
Talk about turning a no into a win-win.
Exactly. It's a brilliant example of finding a creative solution that meets everyone's needs, even if it's not in the way originally intended.
This deep dive is full of such practical advice.
It is.
But I'm curious, what resonates most with you from Jiang's 100-day journey?
What fascinates me is how he reframes rejection.
Wow.
It's not a personal attack,
Right.
but a human interaction,
Yeah.
full of nuance and opportunity. And that shift in perspective can be incredibly empowering.
It's like he's saying rejection is inevitable, but it doesn't have to define us.
Exactly. And by understanding the psychology behind it, developing strategies to manage it, and embracing self-acceptance, we can turn rejection from a roadblock into a stepping stone.
It's like he's pulling back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz of rejection.
Right.
Revealing it to be less intimidating than we imagine.
What a great analogy.
Yeah.
It reminds us that rejection is rarely as scary as we make it out to be.
This is all incredibly inspiring. I feel like I have a new set of tools for navigating those no's and using them to my advantage.
That's the power of Jiang's story. He gives us practical strategies, but also inspires us to approach rejection with a new mindset, one that's curious, resilient,
Yeah.
and focused on personal growth.
This deep dive is a game changer. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on rejection and a renewed sense of confidence to face my own fears.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Embracing rejection as part of the human experience and using it as fuel for growth and self-discovery.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, from the science of rejection to the art of delivering a no, from the importance of asking why to the power of self-acceptance. What a journey.
It's been an incredible exploration, and before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
What would you be capable of achieving if you weren't afraid of rejection? What dreams would you dare to chase?
That's a powerful question to ponder.
It challenges us to confront our fears and consider the possibilities that open up when we embrace rejection as part of the journey.
All right, so we're back. And we've been talking all about this idea of rejection.
Yes.
We were talking about self-acceptance.
Right.
And how that kind of plays into all of this. But it seems like there's like a whole other element here.
Yeah.
Like Jiang's journey highlights how much of our fear comes from like trying to fit a mold. Like trying to be what we think others expect us to be.
Exactly. And through his rejection experiments, Jiang realized that embracing his quirks and being authentic,
Right.
even if it meant being seen as weird or unconventional,
Yeah.
was more fulfilling than trying to please everyone.
It's like that feeling when you finally stop trying to be someone you're not and you can just breathe.
Yes,
It's so liberating.
absolutely.
Did this newfound authenticity like impact how he approached those rejection challenges?
It did. He started to see rejection less as a judgment on his worth
Okay.
and more as feedback about the specific request,
Okay.
the context, or even the other person's mood.
Right. Remember, he made it a habit to ask why whenever he was rejected.
Right.
Yeah, he turned those no's into like little windows into human behavior. Did he ever share any particularly insightful why moments?
One that stands out is his experiment, where he tried giving away $5 bills to strangers.
Oh, wow.
And surprisingly, many refused.
Really?
When he asked why, some expressed confusion or even suspicion, unable to grasp his intentions.
So it wasn't about the money itself,
Right.
but about the context. People were wary because it didn't fit their understanding of how things should work.
Exactly. Later, he repeated this experiment in New York City.
Okay.
But this time, he asked strangers if he could take a picture with them,
Okay.
offering the $5 as compensation.
So adding a why to the equation, I bet that changed things.
It did dramatically. This time, everyone agreed.
Wow.
By providing context and making his intentions clear.
Right.
He eliminated the uncertainty that had triggered the initial rejections.
It's a great lesson in communication. Sometimes a simple explanation
Yeah.
can make all the difference in how our requests are received.
Exactly. And speaking of communication, Jiang had another experiment that really flipped the script on traditional approaches.
Okay.
He decided to play the role of the terrible salesman at a conference.
A terrible salesman. Okay. Now I really need to hear more.
So he approached people offering pamphlets,
Right.
but openly admitted he knew nothing about the product and didn't care if they took one.
That's so counterintuitive.
I know.
You'd think that would lead to even more rejection.
You'd assume so, but the unexpected happened.
Okay.
Some people actually engaged with him because of his honesty.
Really?
It disrupted the usual sales dynamic and caught them off guard.
It's like his authenticity, even in the form of being a terrible salesman,
Right.
made him stand out. He was real, not putting on a show.
Exactly. In a world bombarded with polished sales pitches,
Right.
genuineness can be surprisingly refreshing and effective.
So what's the takeaway for us non-salespeople?
Yeah.
How does this terrible salesman experiment translate to everyday life?
It highlights the power of being upfront, of letting go of the need to appear perfect
Right.
or have all the answers. Sometimes vulnerability can be a strength, especially when it fosters authentic connection.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
Yeah, it has.
Jiang's 100-day rejection challenge might sound extreme,
Right.
but the lessons he learned are so applicable to anyone who wants to overcome fear and achieve their goals.
Absolutely. He shows us that rejection is a universal experience, but it doesn't have to hold us back by understanding its psychology, developing strategies to manage it, and embracing our authentic selves.
Yeah.
We can transform rejection from a roadblock into a stepping stone.
It's like he's giving us permission to be bold, to ask for what we want,
Yeah.
and to not let the fear of no keep us from pursuing our dreams.
Precisely. And that's the beauty of his journey.
Yeah.
He reminds us that rejection is inevitable,
Right.
but our response to it is a choice. We can let it define us,
Right.
or we can use it to become more resilient, more compassionate, and more aligned with our true selves.
What a powerful message, and what a fantastic deep dive into the world of rejection and its unexpected gifts.
It has been a journey.
Thanks for guiding us through Jiang's journey.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, the next time you face rejection, take a deep breath,
Yeah.
ask why,
Okay.
and embrace the opportunity for growth.
Oh,
You
yeah.
might be surprised by what you discover.
That's a great reminder for all of us. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and keep exploring.